So we're carrying on with part 2 of our basic switch functions video. We've just talked about store and forward and cut through forwarding. Now we're going to move on and talk about the last forwarding mode in switches, and we'll also look at our generic switch that we have been talking about over the last few minutes here. So the last forwarding mode we're going to talk about is fragment free. It forwards the frame after the first 64 bytes are received, which basically puts it as a mix between store and forward and cut through switching. Now, fragment-free forwarding reduces collisions because the switch can tell after the first 64 bytes whether or not this is actually part of a collision, but it may still introduce bad frames because fragment-free switching still does not examine the FCS in the Ethernet frame. And I'll be perfectly honest, I've been dealing with network switches for over 10 years now. I can't ever recall seeing a switch that's using fragment-free forwarding that either all use store and forward or cut through, depending on configuration and business and technological needs and so on and so forth. Most of them use store and forward just because it's nice to have those error counters in the switch so that you can very easily look in your switch's command line interface, which we'll do here in the next section, and be able to tell, we're getting a boatload of errors on port 27. There must be a bad cable or a bad network card or a bad patch panel. There's something about port 27 that's not right. And you get your cable tester out and you go find out what the problem is. 9 times out of 10, it's a bad cable. But this isn't troubleshooting. This is CCENT, so we won't go too far afield with that. So let's look at a very basic network and look at how a switch makes its forwarding decisions. So let's say we've got 4 computers like so. They are all connected to an Ethernet switch. And there's the MAC addresses. Obviously, these are all fake MAC addresses, but they work for our demonstration here. And these particular workstations are connected to ports Fast Ethernet 01, 02, 03, and 04 on this particular switch. And you can see I'm not very imaginative. The one with all the 1s in the MAC address is on port 1. The one with all the 2s in the MAC address is on port 2. I'm not very creative in some ways, I guess. So as these workstations send packets across the network, the switch learns, all the packets from the 4 MAC address seem to be coming in on port Fast Ethernet 04, so I'm going to put that in my MAC table. And I'm going to remember that all the ones with the 4s are on port 04. All the ones with the 3s are on 03, as an example. So let's walk through the switching decision on a particular Ethernet frame. So workstation 1 over here sends out an Ethernet frame, and it says that my destination address is 000000444444. So this frame makes it to the switch. The switch looks at the destination address and says, well, I've got this destination address somewhere on my MAC table. What port was that MAC address on? And so the switch forwards that frame out to just this workstation on port Fast Ethernet 04. It doesn't send it out to any of the others unless the switch doesn't know what this MAC address is, at which point it will flood it out to all of the ports and wait for one of these guys to say, oh yeah, I've got that MAC address. I'm over here. You send it my way. This workstation over here then replies back, its destination address is all 1s, and the same process works in reverse. I'm going back this way, hey, you're on port Fast Ethernet 01, and it sends it out to this workstation here. What's really impressive in all this is that, this sounds like something we could do as human beings. The switch makes all of these decisions in microseconds. It just processes hundreds or thousands of packets a second through these switches. And it's still kind of amazing, even though I deal with this stuff every day, that these switches are just so fast, at least in modern times here. And the technology has just increased by leaps and bounds just over the last few years. And that concludes our discussion of basic switch functions.